What if I told you that a single father working late one night would say something to his boss that would change both their lives forever? But here's the thing, she wasn't supposed to hear it. She was standing right behind him when those words slipped out, and what happened next? Well, that's a story you're going to want to hear until the very end. Marcus Reynolds had been working at Whitmore Industries for 3 years, and in all that time, he had never once let his guard down. He couldn't afford to. As a single father to a 7-year-old daughter named Lily, every decision he made, every word he spoke, every risk he didn't take was calculated with her in mind. His life wasn't his own anymore, and honestly, he was okay with that. Lily was his entire world, the reason he woke up at 5 in the morning to prepare her lunch, the reason he stayed late at the office to ensure every project was perfect, the reason he hadn't been on a single date in 4 years. But there was one thing Marcus hadn't calculated, one variable he couldn't control, and her name was Victoria Whitmore. Victoria was everything Marcus had trained himself not to want. She was the daughter of the company's founder, but she had earned her position as CEO through sheer determination and an almost frightening level of intelligence. At 34, she had transformed her father's modest marketing firm into a multinational corporation. She had long, silky hair that cascaded down her back like a waterfall of midnight, and her porcelain skin seemed to glow under the fluorescent office lights. Her figure was the kind that made heads turn in boardrooms and on sidewalks alike, but it was her eyes that haunted Marcus, those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through every wall he had built. The problem was, Victoria didn't just see through his walls. She made him want to tear them down himself. It was a Friday night, well past 10 o'clock, and the office was empty except for Marcus. He had volunteered to stay late to finish a presentation that was due Monday, but the truth was more complicated than that. Lily was spending the weekend with his mother, and the silence of his apartment had become unbearable. At least here, surrounded by spreadsheets and coffee cups, he could pretend he wasn't lonely. He was muttering to himself as he worked, a habit he had picked up during the long nights of Lily's infancy when talking aloud was the only way to stay awake. Come on, Marcus, focus. Stop thinking about her. Stop thinking about the way she smiled at you in the meeting today. Stop thinking about how she laughed at your stupid joke about the quarterly reports. Stop thinking about. He paused, running his hand through his hair in frustration. God, you have no idea how many times I've imagined this. Just walking into her office, telling her the truth, telling her that I. Telling me what? Marcus's blood turned to ice. He spun around in his chair so fast that he nearly fell out of it, and there she was. Victoria Whitmore, standing in the doorway of his cubicle, still wearing the same black dress she had worn to the afternoon meeting. Her heels were in her hand, her feet bare on the carpet, and there was an expression on her face that Marcus couldn't read. Ms. Whitmore, he stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. I thought everyone had gone home. What are you, how long have you been standing there? Victoria took a step closer, and then another. The fluorescent lights above them flickered slightly, casting shadows across her features that made her look almost otherworldly. Long enough, she said quietly. You have no idea how many times you've imagined what, Marcus? This was the moment. This was the moment where everything could change, where the careful life he had constructed could come crashing down around him. He thought about Lily, about the mortgage payment due next week, about the health insurance that came with this job. He thought about all the reasons he should lie, should laugh it off, should make some joke about imagining himself winning the lottery or finally organizing his desk. But then Victoria took another step, and she was so close now that he could smell her perfume, something soft and floral with a hint of vanilla, and all the careful calculations in his head dissolved into nothing. Show me, Victoria whispered. Show me what you imagine. If you're already on the edge of your seat, go ahead and hit that like button right now, because this story is just getting started. Marcus stood up slowly, his heart pounding so hard he was certain she could hear it. They were inches apart now, and he could see the slight tremble in her hands, could see that beneath her composed exterior, she was just as terrified as he was. "I can't," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're my boss. You're Victoria Whitmore. And I'm just..." "Just what?" she interrupted, and there was something fierce in her voice now, something almost angry. "Just a single father who works harder than anyone else in this company? Just a man who makes me laugh in meetings when I want to scream from the pressure? Just the only person in this entire building who treats me like a human being instead of a last name?" Marcus blinked. "You noticed that?" Victoria laughed, but it wasn't her professional laugh, the one she used in board meetings and press conferences. This laugh was real, raw, almost broken. "I notice everything about you, Marcus. I notice when you come in early because Lily has a field trip and you need to leave by 3. I notice when you bring homemade cookies to the break room because you accidentally made too many for her school bake sale. I notice when you stay late on Fridays because you're avoiding going home to an empty apartment." She was crying now, tears streaming down her perfect face, and Marcus felt something inside him break. "Victoria," he breathed, and it was the first time he had ever used her first name. "I'm so tired of being alone," she whispered. "I'm so tired of everyone wanting something from me, my money, my connections, my name. But you never wanted any of that. You never even seemed to notice any of it. And I kept waiting for you to see me, really see me, but you were always so focused on your work, on your daughter, on keeping this perfect distance between us." "I was protecting myself," Marcus admitted. "After what happened with Lily's mother, I promised myself I would never let anyone that close again. I couldn't risk being broken like that twice. And you," he laughed bitterly. "You could break me without even trying." Victoria reached out and touched his face, her fingers trembling against his cheek. "What if I don't want to break you? What if I want to help you heal?" The kiss that followed wasn't like anything Marcus had ever experienced. It wasn't the passionate, frantic kisses of his youth or the comfortable, routine kisses of his failed marriage. This kiss was something else entirely, a promise, a question, a leap of faith off a cliff with no guarantee of a soft landing. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "You never did show me," she murmured. "Show you what?" "What you imagine. When you think about me." Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he had allowed himself in years. "I imagine Sunday mornings. Lily making a mess in the kitchen trying to make pancakes. You pretending to read the newspaper but actually helping her flip them when she's not looking. I imagine someone asking about my weekend and actually having an answer that doesn't make me feel pathetic. I imagine," his voice broke. "I imagine not being so damn lonely anymore." Victoria pulled back slightly, and for a horrible moment, Marcus thought he had said too much, been too honest, scared her away with the intensity of his loneliness. But then she smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after an endless night. "That sounds perfect," she said. "That sounds absolutely perfect." But life, as Marcus had learned the hard way, rarely stayed perfect for long. The following Monday, Marcus arrived at work to find the entire office buzzing with gossip. At first, he assumed it was about him and Victoria. Had someone seen them leave together Friday night? Had someone spotted Victoria's car parked outside his apartment building all weekend? But as he made his way to his desk, he realized the whispers weren't about him at all. They were about Victoria's father. Richard Whitmore had been in semi-retirement for years, content to let his daughter run the company he had built while he played golf and traveled with his much younger wife. But according to the rumors racing through the office, Richard was returning. And he wasn't happy. Marcus didn't have to wait long to find out why. At precisely 9 o'clock, Victoria called an emergency meeting for all senior staff, and one look at her face told Marcus everything he needed to know. The woman standing at the head of the conference table wasn't the Victoria who had laughed in his arms 2 nights ago, who had whispered dreams of Sunday mornings into his ear. This Victoria was armored, guarded, every inch the corporate warrior. "My father has expressed concerns about recent decisions I've made regarding the company," she announced, her voice steady despite the tension in her shoulders. "He will be conducting a review of all major projects and personnel decisions from the past 6 months. This is a normal part of our corporate governance, and I expect everyone to cooperate fully with his requests." Marcus felt his stomach drop. 6 months ago, Victoria had personally approved his promotion to senior project manager. 6 months ago, she had doubled his salary and given him the flexible schedule that allowed him to be the father Lily deserved. If Richard Whitmore decided to reverse those decisions. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emergency exit, 5 minutes. Don't let anyone see you leave." Victoria didn't look at him as he slipped out of the conference room, but he saw her hand tremble slightly as she continued speaking. The emergency exit led to a narrow stairwell that smelled like concrete and old cigarettes. Victoria was already there, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "He knows," she said without preamble. "Someone told him about Friday night. Someone told him I stayed late and that your car was still in the parking lot. He's using the corporate review as an excuse, but what he really wants is to humiliate me. To prove that I can't separate my personal life from my professional decisions. So we end it," Marcus said quietly. "We pretend Friday never happened. You throw me under the bus, use me as proof that you've dealt with the problem, and your father backs off." Victoria stared at him. "You would do that? You would let me destroy your career to save mine? It's not my career I'm worried about. It's yours. You've worked your entire life for this company, Victoria. You've sacrificed everything, friendships, relationships, your own happiness. I'm not going to be the reason you lose it all. And what about Lily? What about your daughter? If I fire you, I'll find another job. I'm good at what I do. But there's only one you, Victoria. There's only one person who can run this company the way you do, who can make it what your father always dreamed it could be. If I'm the obstacle standing in the way of that, then I'll step aside. I'll always step aside for you." Something broke in Victoria's expression. "This is why," she whispered. "This is why I fell for you. Because you're not trying to use me. You're not trying to climb a ladder or secure a fortune. You just," she shook her head. "You just want me to be happy. Even at your own expense. That's what you do when you love someone," Marcus said simply. The word hung between them, heavy and terrifying and impossible to take back. "You love me?" Marcus smiled sadly. "I've loved you since the day you spent an hour in my cubicle helping me troubleshoot a spreadsheet error when you should have been preparing for a board meeting. I've loved you since you memorized Lily's name from a form you glanced at once and asked about her every time we talked. I've loved you since you brought me coffee one morning because you noticed I'd been yawning in meetings." Victoria crossed the distance between them in 2 steps and kissed him with a desperation that tasted like tears. "I'm not letting you go," she said against his mouth. "I don't care what my father thinks. I don't care what anyone thinks. I've spent my whole life making decisions based on what everyone else wanted from me, and for once, just once, I'm going to do something because it makes me happy. Victoria. We're going to figure this out together. That's what you do when you love someone, right? You find a way. If this story is making you feel something, drop a comment right now and tell me what you would do if you were in Marcus's shoes. Would you sacrifice everything for love?" Richard Whitmore was nothing like his daughter. Where Victoria was strategic and thoughtful, Richard was impulsive and domineering. Where Victoria led with empathy, Richard led with fear. He arrived at the office like a storm, all thunder and lightning, and within hours, the entire building seemed to be holding its breath. Marcus watched from his desk as Richard swept through the floor, making comments about soft leadership and emotional decision-making. Every word seemed designed to undermine Victoria, to remind everyone that despite her title, she was still just the founder's daughter playing at being CEO. But Victoria didn't waver. She stood her ground in meeting after meeting, defending her decisions with data and logic that left Richard sputtering. She refused to apologize for the changes she had made, refused to admit that her methods were inferior to his. And through it all, she kept her distance from Marcus. It was the right decision, the smart decision. Any hint of favoritism would give Richard the ammunition he needed. But watching Victoria walk past his desk without so much as a glance, watching her treat him like just another employee, was slowly killing Marcus. "She's doing it to protect you," his mother said when he called her that night, Lily already asleep in the guest room. "You should know that better than anyone. You'd do the same thing for that little girl of yours." "I know," Marcus sighed. "It's just, I finally let myself want something, Mom. I finally let myself believe I could be happy again. And now it feels like it's all slipping away. Love isn't supposed to be easy, Marcus. If it was, everyone would have it. The question is whether it's worth fighting for." The answer came Thursday morning, when Richard Whitmore called Marcus into his office. "Close the door," Richard said, not looking up from the papers on his desk. "Sit down." Marcus sat, his palms sweating despite the air conditioning. Richard was silent for a long moment, letting the tension build, a power play Marcus recognized from every terrible boss he had ever had. "I've been looking into your file," Richard finally said. "Impressive rise through the company. My daughter seems to think very highly of your work." He looked up then, and his eyes were cold. "Tell me, Mr. Reynolds. Are you sleeping with her?" Marcus felt the blood drain from his face, but he forced himself to meet Richard's gaze. "With all due respect, sir, that's not an appropriate question. I didn't ask if it was appropriate. I asked if you were doing it." "No," Marcus said evenly. "I'm not sleeping with your daughter." It wasn't a lie, not technically. They hadn't slept together, not in the way Richard meant. But the truth was more complicated than a simple yes or no, and Marcus knew that Richard knew it too. "I see." Richard leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Let me tell you something, Mr. Reynolds. I built this company from nothing. I sacrificed my first marriage, my relationship with Victoria, decades of my life, all so that Whitmore Industries could become what it is today. And I will not stand by and watch some gold-digging single father dismantle everything I've created. I'm not finished." Richard's voice cracked like a whip. "You're going to resign. Today. You're going to tell everyone you found a better opportunity, and you're going to disappear from my daughter's life permanently. In exchange, I'll provide you with a generous severance package, enough to take care of you and your daughter for the next year while you find new employment." Marcus stared at him. "And if I refuse?" Richard smiled, and it was the coldest thing Marcus had ever seen. "If you refuse, I'll make sure no one in this industry ever hires you again. I'll tie you up in lawsuits until you're drowning in legal fees. And I'll personally ensure that your daughter knows exactly what kind of man her father really is, a man who chose a woman over his own child's stability." The mention of Lily was like a knife to the heart. Marcus had faced a lot of difficult things in his life, a wife who had walked out without warning, sleepless nights with a colicky baby, the constant terror of trying to be both mother and father to a child who deserved so much more than he could give. But this was different. This was someone threatening to weaponize his greatest vulnerability, to use his love for his daughter as a tool of manipulation. "I want to think about it," Marcus said quietly. "Give me until the end of the day." Richard nodded, looking satisfied. "You have until 5 o'clock, and Mr. Reynolds? This is a one-time offer. If you try to warn my daughter, if you try to fight me on this, you'll regret it." Marcus left the office in a daze. He walked past the break room, past Victoria's corner office, past the cubicles full of co-workers who had no idea that everything was falling apart. He made it to the bathroom before the shaking started, gripping the sink with white-knuckled hands as he stared at his reflection in the mirror. This was the moment. This was the choice that would define the rest of his life. He could take Richard's deal, disappear from Victoria's life, and protect himself and Lily from whatever destruction the old man could rain down. It was the safe choice, the logical choice, the choice that the Marcus of a week ago would have made without hesitation. But that was before Friday night. That was before Victoria had looked at him with tears in her eyes and whispered about Sunday mornings. That was before he had admitted, out loud and for the first time, that he loved her. He thought about Lily, about the bedtime stories where the prince always fought the dragon, where the hero never gave up no matter how impossible the odds seemed. What kind of father would he be if he taught her to run from every fight? What kind of man would he be if he let fear dictate his choices? Marcus took a deep breath, splashed cold water on his face, and made his decision. He found Victoria in her office, staring out the window at the city below. She didn't turn around when he entered, but he saw her shoulders tense. "Marcus, you shouldn't be here. If someone sees. Your father just threatened to destroy my life if I don't resign and disappear," Marcus interrupted. "He told me I have until 5 o'clock to make a decision." Victoria spun around, her face pale. "He what? He knows about us. Or he suspects, at least. He offered me a severance package in exchange for walking away from you permanently. And when I hesitated, he threatened to blacklist me from the entire industry and tell Lily that I'm a terrible father." That manipulative, controlling, Victoria's voice shook with fury. "I am going to end him. I am going to." "Wait." Marcus crossed to her, taking her hands in his. "Just wait. Listen to me for a minute." Victoria stopped, her breathing ragged. "What?" "I've been making decisions out of fear my whole life. I was afraid of being hurt, so I never let anyone get close. I was afraid of failing Lily, so I never took any risks. I was afraid of you, of how you made me feel, so I built walls instead of bridges." He squeezed her hands. "But I'm done being afraid. I'm done letting people like your father dictate my choices. I love you, Victoria. And I'm not walking away. Not today, not ever. Marcus. Let him do his worst. Let him try to destroy me. Because I'd rather lose everything fighting for us than keep everything by giving you up." Victoria stared at him for a long moment, and then she kissed him, not the desperate, tearful kiss of the stairwell, but something stronger. Something that felt like a declaration of war. "Together," she said when they pulled apart. "We do this together." "Together," Marcus agreed. Now this is the part of the story where everything changes. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss a single update. The battle that followed was unlike anything the corporate world had ever seen. Victoria called an emergency board meeting, presenting evidence of financial irregularities from her father's tenure, money that had been funneled to personal accounts, contracts that had been awarded to friends without proper vetting, decades of decisions that had prioritized Richard's ego over the company's well-being. Richard fought back with everything he had. He dug into Marcus's past, trying to find something, anything, that could be used against him. He hired private investigators to follow Victoria, hoping to catch her in some compromising position. He leaked stories to the press about family dysfunction and corporate power struggles. But through it all, Marcus and Victoria stood together. They were transparent about their relationship, acknowledging it publicly and implementing strict protocols to ensure that personal feelings never influenced professional decisions. They welcomed scrutiny, invited investigation, demonstrated through their actions that they had nothing to hide. And slowly, the tide began to turn. The board, initially skeptical of Victoria's relationship with an employee, was won over by her leadership. The press, expecting scandal, found only a genuine love story between two people who had found each other against all odds. Even the employees, initially uncertain about how to react, began to rally around their CEO and the single father who looked at her like she hung the moon. The breaking point came on a Tuesday, 3 months after Richard had issued his ultimatum. Marcus was at his desk, working on a presentation, when his phone rang with a call from Lily's school. "Mr. Reynolds? This is Principal Davidson. Lily had an incident during recess, and we need you to come pick her up." Marcus's heart stopped. "An incident? Is she okay? Is she hurt?" "She's not physically injured, but she's very upset. There was a confrontation with another student. Some comments were made about your situation. I think it would be best if you came as soon as possible." Marcus was out of his chair before the principal finished speaking, grabbing his jacket and heading for the elevator. He had just pressed the button when Victoria appeared beside him. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Your face, something happened with Lily?" "The school called. Some kid said something to her, upset her. I have to go." "I'm coming with you." "Victoria, you don't have to." "Marcus." She took his hand. "She's going to be my stepdaughter someday if I have anything to say about it. Let me be there for her. Let me be there for both of you." They drove to the school together, Marcus gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. When they arrived, they found Lily sitting in the principal's office, her face streaked with tears and her tiny fists clenched in her lap. "Daddy!" She launched herself at Marcus the moment she saw him, wrapping her arms around his neck and sobbing into his shoulder. "Daddy, they said Mom left because I was bad. They said that's why you don't have a wife, because nobody wants to be my mom." Marcus felt his heart shatter into a million pieces. He had known this day would come eventually, had prepared speeches and explanations and reassurances. But nothing could have prepared him for the pain of hearing his daughter's broken voice ask the question he asked himself every single day. "Lily, baby, listen to me." He pulled back, cradling her face in his hands. "Your mother leaving had nothing to do with you. Nothing. She had her own problems, her own demons, things that you couldn't understand and that I couldn't fix. But it was never, ever because of anything you did." "But then why?" Lily's voice was so small, so broken. "Why doesn't anybody want us?" Victoria knelt down beside them, her designer dress pooling on the floor of the principal's office. "Lily? Can I tell you something?" Lily looked at her warily, still clinging to her father. "Who are you?" "I'm Victoria. I'm your dad's," she glanced at Marcus, who nodded. "I'm your dad's girlfriend. And I wanted to tell you that what those kids said is wrong. Completely wrong. Because I want you. I want both of you. More than I've ever wanted anything in my entire life." Lily stared at her. "You're really pretty." Victoria laughed, a surprised sound that was almost a sob. "Thank you. You're really pretty too. Do you make pancakes?" "I'm terrible at pancakes, honestly. I burn them every time. But I'm really good at ordering pancakes from restaurants. And I'm pretty good at helping with homework, and I've been told I give excellent hugs, and I know all the words to most Disney songs." Lily considered this seriously. "Daddy makes good pancakes. I know. He told me about your Sunday mornings. Will you come to our Sunday mornings?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "If you'll have me, I would love nothing more than to come to your Sunday mornings." Lily extracted herself from her father's arms and, to everyone's surprise, wrapped herself around Victoria instead. "Okay," she said into Victoria's shoulder. "You can be my person." Watching his daughter embrace the woman he loved, Marcus felt something inside him heal that he hadn't even known was broken. The war with Richard Whitmore ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. Faced with the evidence of his financial misdeeds and the united front of the board, he agreed to step down permanently from any role in the company. He moved to his vacation home in Florida, married a woman half his age, and slowly faded from relevance. Victoria and Marcus were married on a Sunday morning, in a small ceremony in the garden of Victoria's childhood home, the one good thing her father had ever given her. Lily was the flower girl, scattering rose petals with the same intensity she brought to everything, and Victoria's mother, who had divorced Richard years ago and become one of Marcus's biggest supporters, walked her daughter down the aisle. Marcus's vows were simple, but they made everyone cry. Victoria, when I met you, I was a man trying to survive. I had built walls around my heart, convinced myself that safety was more important than happiness, taught myself to want nothing because wanting something meant risking everything. But you changed that. You looked at me like I was worth fighting for. You looked at my daughter like she was a gift, not a complication. You looked at our messy, complicated, terrifying situation and said, "We'll figure this out together." And we did. We are. Because that's what love is, not the absence of fear, but the decision to face fear together. I don't promise you perfection, Victoria. But I promise you Sunday mornings. I promise you burned pancakes and homework help and Disney songs. I promise you my whole heart, my whole life, my whole self. Today and every day, for as long as you'll have me. Victoria's vows were longer, because she had more to say. Marcus Reynolds, I spent 34 years being exactly what everyone expected me to be. The perfect student, the perfect executive, the perfect daughter, even when my father didn't deserve my perfection. I was so busy being impressive that I forgot to be happy. And then you came along, with your spreadsheets and your homemade cookies and your terrible jokes about quarterly reports, and you reminded me that there's more to life than board meetings and bottom lines. You looked at me like I was a person, not a position. You challenged me, and comforted me, and made me laugh when I wanted to scream. You chose me, not my money, not my name, not my connections. Just me. Victoria. The woman who burns pancakes and knows all the Disney songs and is terrible at expressing her feelings but is trying, really trying, because you make me want to try. I promise to keep trying, Marcus. I promise to be the partner you deserve and the stepmother Lily deserves and the person who shows up, every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because you showed me what it means to love someone more than you fear losing them, and I'm never going to forget that lesson. They kissed as the sun rose over the garden, Lily squealing with joy between them, and Marcus knew, with the same certainty that he knew his daughter's smile and his own heartbeat, that everything had been worth it. 2 years later, Marcus sat on the porch of their new house, Victoria's house, technically, but it felt like home in a way nowhere else ever had, watching Lily teach her baby brother how to catch fireflies in the summer dusk. Be gentle. Lily instructed, with all the authority of a 9-year-old who had wanted a sibling for as long as she could remember. They're little, so you have to be careful. James, at 18 months, was more interested in eating the grass than catching fireflies, but he watched his big sister with worshipful eyes that reminded Marcus so much of Victoria that it made his chest ache. You're thinking deep thoughts, Victoria said, appearing beside him with 2 glasses of wine. She settled into the chair next to his, her hair loose around her shoulders, her feet bare, looking nothing like the intimidating CEO she was from 9 to 5. I'm thinking about how close I came to missing all of this, Marcus admitted. If I had taken your father's deal, if I had walked away that day. But you didn't. I almost did. For a minute there, sitting in that bathroom, I almost convinced myself that the safe choice was the right choice. And what changed your mind? Marcus turned to look at her, really look at her, the way he had learned to look at her over the past 3 years. He took in the laugh lines around her eyes, the gray starting to appear at her temples, the absolute peace in her expression that had replaced the constant tension she used to carry. I thought about what I wanted Lily to learn from me, he said finally. I thought about all those bedtime stories where the hero fights the dragon, and I realized that I was teaching her to be brave while being afraid to be brave myself. And I knew in that moment, that I couldn't look her in the eye and tell her to chase her dreams if I was too scared to chase mine. Victoria reached over and took his hand. You're a good father, Marcus Reynolds. I'm a lucky father. He brought her hand to his lips. I'm a lucky husband. I'm a lucky man, full stop. We're both lucky. We both got exactly what we imagined. Marcus laughed, remembering that night in the empty office, the words he had never meant for her to hear. I never did tell you, did I? What I was imagining when you walked in? You told me Sunday mornings. That was part of it. But there was more. He turned to face her fully. I was imagining a life where I didn't have to pretend anymore. A life where I could be the person I really was, scared and lonely and desperate for connection, and have someone love me anyway. I was imagining someone who would see all my broken pieces and decide to stay. I was imagining, his voice cracked. I was imagining exactly this. This porch, this sunset, those kids, this ring on my finger. I was imagining you. Victoria kissed him softly. And now you don't have to imagine anymore. No, Marcus agreed, pulling her close. Now I get to live it. As if on cue, Lily came running up to the porch, a firefly cupped gently in her hands. James toddled behind her, grass stains on his knees and a gummy smile on his face. Look what we caught. Lily exclaimed. Can we keep it? Please. Fireflies don't live very long in jars, sweetheart, Marcus said. But you can watch it for a minute before you let it go. Lily considered this, then nodded solemnly. She opened her hands, and the firefly drifted upward, its light blinking softly in the gathering darkness. Bye, firefly, she whispered. Have a good life. They watched it rise, all four of them together on the porch, a family that had been built from heartbreak and hope, from late nights and leap of faith, from the courage to imagine something better and the determination to make it real. And as the stars began to appear above them, Marcus realized that he had never been very good at catching fireflies either. But somehow, against all odds, he had managed to catch something far more beautiful. He had caught a life he could be proud of. He had caught a love that was worth fighting for. He had caught his happily ever after. And he was never, ever letting it go. So that's the story of Marcus and Victoria, a single dad and a CEO, two broken people who found their way to each other against all odds. It's a story about courage and vulnerability, about choosing love over fear, about building a family from the pieces that other people left behind. But more than that, it's a story about you. Because here's the truth, every single person watching this video has something they're afraid to reach for. A dream they've put aside, a person they've never told how they feel, a life they've convinced themselves they don't deserve. And I want you to know, from the bottom of my heart, that you deserve it. Whatever your Sunday morning looks like, whatever your firefly in the dusk moment is, you deserve to chase it. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, I have just one request. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. That's how we build a community of people who believe in love, in courage, in happily ever afters. That's how we remind each other that we're never as alone as we feel. And now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me, from which country are you watching this video? I love knowing that these stories travel across oceans and time zones, connecting people who might never meet but who share the same hopes and dreams. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And remember, the only thing standing between you and your happily ever after is the courage to imagine it. Until next time.